The studio lights burned hot, washing the set of the Kelly Clarkson Show in a cheerful glow. The audience buzzed with anticipation, their energy bouncing off the walls as Kelly Clarkson leaned forward, all Texas charm and easy smiles. Across from her sat Tim McGraw, country royalty, in a tailored black blazer, cowboy hat tilted just so, calm, grounded. Legendary. His new album had just dropped. This was supposed to be a celebration. Music, life, stories from the road, but beneath the polish, something simmered in, unspoken tension no one could quite name. Kelly kicked things off the way she always did, warm and inviting. "Tim, it's so good to have you here," she said, her enthusiasm effortless. "This new album, it's raw, it's real, and people are talking. What's the story behind it?" The crowd cheered. Tim smiled faintly, tipping his hat. He talked about late-night writing sessions, years on the road, songs that came pouring out when the noise finally quieted. But his answers were restrained, careful, as if he were editing himself in real time. At first, no one noticed. Kelly kept the rhythm moving, joking lightly, drawing him out like an old friend. She asked about collaborations with younger artists, the way country music was evolving. That's when his tone shifted. "Just to be clear," Tim said, voice low and firm, "I'm not here to chase trends. I make music for people who get it, not the ones scrolling through their phones hunting for the next viral hit." The audience laughed, assuming it was a playful jab. Kelly didn't. Her smile held, but her eyes sharpened. Something was off. She pivoted smoothly. "Fair enough. But you've got to admit some of these newer artists are shaking things up. That duet you did? It's blowing up online. Fans are loving it." Tim shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. "Yeah, well," he said, "the edge unmistakable now. Fans eat up a lot of things." The laughter faded into uncertain murmurs. Kelly, ever quick on her feet, tried to redirect. Tour plans, live shows, connection. But Tim cut her off. "Look, Kelly, I'm not here to talk about what's trending on some app," he said. "I'm here to talk about the music. Can we do that?" The room went dead quiet, the kind of silence that feels like a collective held breath. Kelly leaned back, composed, unflinching. "All right," she said calmly. "Let's talk music. Tell me about the heart of this album." The shift was unmistakable. The air felt heavier now. She leaned forward again, softer this time, coaxing. "You've said this is your most personal work yet. What makes it so special to you?" Tim's hands tightened around the armrests, knuckles pale. He glanced at the audience, then back at Kelly. "This album," he said slowly, voice rough, "it's about what really matters. Family, struggle. The stuff that keeps you awake at night. Not all that noise out there." A few people clapped, unsure. The energy didn't quite land. Kelly nodded, building on it. "That soul that's always been your strength. Is there one track that's especially close to your heart?" His jaw worked, rigid. "They're all close," he said flatly. "But I don't think people really listen anymore. They're too busy chasing clicks, chasing drama. They don't want the music, they want a story to sell." The words hit harder than he probably intended. "We're listening right now," Kelly replied, steady but warm. "Take us inside one of those songs." Tim leaned back, crossed his arms, and let out a short, humorless laugh. "You want me to spill my guts for the cameras? For headlines?" He shook his head. "That's not how this works, Kelly." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Whispers rippled. "I'm not asking for headlines," Kelly said gently. "I'm asking for you. Your fans care about what drives you, why this album is different. That did it. You think it's about the fans." Tim snapped. "Half of them don't even buy records anymore. They just want a clip, something to share so they can pretend they know me." The studio felt smaller now. The tension thick and undeniable. Off stage. A producer motioned subtly to wrap it up, but Kelly leaned in, lower, calmer. I get it. Tim, the industry's changed, Kelly said carefully. I know it's harder now. But you're still out here making music that matters. So why not share that? Why not let people in? It wasn't a soundbite. It was a genuine appeal. Tim's expression hardened. He uncrossed his arms and leaned forward, his voice slicing clean through the studio. Because some things aren't for sale, Kelly. Not everything is a performance. The words landed heavy and final. For the first time, the audience seemed to understand this wasn't an interview slipping off script. Something deeper was breaking open. The studio lights hadn't changed, but it felt like they dimmed anyway. Kelly leaned back, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face carefully composed. She'd handled tense moments before, but this wasn't bluster or ego. This was personal, and it cut deep. Around her, the crowd sat frozen, enthusiasm replaced by uneasy silence. Offstage, a producer hovered near the commercial break cue. Kelly caught his eye and gave the slightest shake of her head. Not yet, Tim, she said, steady but quietly intense. I hear you. Not everything is a performance. But you're here because you do have something to share. So let's talk about that. What's the one thing you want people to take away from this album? It was a lifeline, a chance to pull back. Tim didn't take it. He leaned back instead, the brim of his cowboy hat casting his eyes in shadow. He exhaled slowly, like he was deciding whether to speak or shut the whole thing down. You want to know what I want people to take away? He said at last, his voice low and weighted. I want them to stop turning everything into a circus. Music used to mean something. It was about stories, about feeling. Now, it's just content, another post to scroll past. He paused. I'm tired of it, Kelly. I'm tired of playing the game. The audience stirred. A few murmurs, no applause. This wasn't a moment meant to be clapped. It was raw, unfiltered, uncomfortable. Kelly nodded slowly, her expression softening, but there was a spark of resolve in her eyes. I get that, she said. This industry can feel like a machine chewing up what's real and spitting out noise. But you're still making music. You're still pouring your heart into it. That's not playing the game. That's fighting it. Her sincerity was unmistakable. A bridge built from lived experience. But Tim's face didn't change. He looked at her. Then at the audience. For a moment, it seemed like he might ease the tension. Instead, a bitter smile tugged at his lips. Fighting it, he repeated, his voice carrying a sharper edge. You think this is fighting it? Sitting under these lights, answering the same questions, smiling for the cameras. He gestured vaguely around the set. This is the game, Kelly, and you're good at it. Better than most. The words hit like a slap. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Kelly's smile vanished. Her eyes locked onto his end for the first time. She didn't have a quick recovery. No laugh. No smoothing over. The producer signaled again. Urgent now. Kelly ignored him. That's not fair, she said calmly, firmly. I'm here because I love music. Same as you. I'm not your enemy. Silence. The kind that makes every small sound feel invasive. Tim stared at her, unreadable. For a split second, it looked like he might step back. Then he stood. The chair scraped loudly against the stage floor. The sound jarring in the quiet. Maybe not, he said quietly. But I'm done with this. He turned and walked off the set, boots heavy against the polished floor, disappearing behind the curtain. The studio froze. Kelly sat alone under the lights, the empty chair beside her radiating absence. The echo of Tim McGraw's footsteps faded, leaving behind a hollow void. The audience didn't move. Eyes jumped between the vacant seat and Kelly, who remained perfectly still. Her composure stretched thin. Offstage, chaos erupted. The producer frantically signaled for a break. Voices crackled through headsets. Whispered theories spread among the crewdom had been distant all day, tense during prep. Something had been building. Finally, Kelly drew a slow breath and turned back to the audience. Managing a small, tight smile. "Well," she said softly, "that was unexpected." A few nervous laughs surfaced, quickly dying. "This show is about real conversations," she continued, "and sometimes real moments get messy, and that's okay." Behind the scenes, phones were already lighting up. Clips were spreading fast. Hashtags multiplying in the control room. The director rewound the footage again and again, searching for the exact moment everything cracked. As the fallout unfolded in real time, Kelly, unaware that the moment was already detonating online, pressed on. "Let's take a quick break," she said, her smile widening just enough to steady the room. "When we come back, we've got more to talk about, and I promise, it's going to be good." The applause was hesitant, but it came. The cameras cut to commercial. The instant the red light went dark, Kelly's shoulders sagged. She rubbed a hand across her forehead and let out a sharp breath. An assistant rushed in with a bottle of water, but Kelly waved it off, her gaze fixed on the empty space where Tim had stood. Backstage, Tim hadn't gone far. He lingered in a dim hallway, hat pulled low, hands buried in his pockets. His manager was already there, clipboard tucked under one arm, voice lowered but urgent. "We need to get ahead of this," he whispered. "People are going to talk. We can spin it, say you weren't feeling well, something." Tim didn't respond. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on the floor. "You walk off like that, it becomes a story," the manager pressed. "You know how this works." Tim lifted his head, eyes flashing. "Let it be a story," he said quietly. "I'm not apologizing for saying what I feel." The manager scrubbed a hand over his face, but before he could push back, a stagehand approached, nervous. "Mr. McGraw's team is asking if you'll come back out. They're willing to rework the segment. Keep it strictly about the music." Tim hesitated. Something flickered regret, maybe butted past just as quickly. He shook his head, slow and final. "I'm done here." He turned and walked toward the exit, his boots echoing down the hallway with unmistakable finality. The stagehand watched him go, then hurried back to relay the news. Out on set, the studio hummed as the commercial break ended. The audience settled into their seats, whispers fading. Kelly Clarkson stood center stage as the lights returned, resolve glinting in her eyes. The producer had urged her to pivot, to move on. Kelly didn't. "All right, y'all," she said, that familiar warmth still there, though tempered, now rooted. "We just had ourselves a bit of a curveball, didn't we?" Soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. "Tim's got a lot on his mind," she continued. "And sometimes real conversations don't go the way we expect. This show is about honesty, about showing up as you are. So let's keep doing that." She sat, leaned in. "Let's talk about music. About what it means to pour your soul into something and release it into the world." The audience leaned forward with her. Kelly spoke from experience, the pressure to stay relevant, the cost of vulnerability, the weight of giving people something real in an industry always asking for more. She didn't say Tim's name, but his presence lingered in every word. "You put your heart out there," she said, emotions steady but unmistakable. "And sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it surprises people. But that's what makes it worth it." This time, the applause was full. Rallying backstage, the mood was anything but calm. Tim's manager paced the green room, phone glued to his ear as publicists and reporters circled. Clips were already everywhere, rewound, dissected, labeled a feud, a meltdown. Outside, Tim climbed into his black SUV. The cool night air hit his face as he closed the door and sat there, hands gripping the wheel. Not regret exactly, but the weight of consequence settled in. Inside the studio, Kelly wrapped the segment and introduced the next guest-rising pop artist, who burst onto the stage with unfiltered enthusiasm. The contrast was sharp. The audience embraced it, clapping eagerly. But Kelly's eyes flicked once to the empty chair. Her producer met her gaze with a look of quiet respect. She'd held the show together, turned fracture into something human. Still, it had cost her something. Meanwhile, Tim pulled out of the lot. The city lights streaked past as his phone buzzed relentlessly, unanswered in his pocket. He thought about the album, about Kelly, about the hurt in her eyes when his words landed harder than he'd meant them to. It hadn't been personal, but it had felt that way. The industry, the expectations, the endless demand to perform. It had all boiled over, and she'd been standing closest to the flame. As the studio shrank in his rearview mirror, Tim wondered, quietly, if he'd crossed a line he couldn't undo. Kelly rose to meet the next guest's energy, laughing, singing along, holding the room the way only she could. But those closest to her noticed the strain. She couldn't fully hide the way her eyes lingered a fraction too long, the way her hands fidgeted whenever the cameras cut away. As the show wrapped, she thanked the audience with her usual warmth and sincerity. Still, the moment the stage lights dimmed, she disappeared backstage, her smile falling at once. An assistant pressed a phone into her hand, already pulled up to the flood of reactions pouring in. Kelly barely skimmed the screen, the clips looping Tim's exit, the speculation multiplying by the second. She set the phone down and shook her head softly. "Let's not do this right now," she said, and headed for her dressing room. Online. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Fans and critics tore the moment apart, frame by frame. Some praised Tim's raw honesty. Others called it a tantrum. Kelly's supporters rallied hard, applauding her composure and grace, while others questioned whether she'd pushed too far. As always, the truth lived somewhere between the extremes, messier than the headlines allowed. In her dressing room, Kelly sat before the mirror, studying her reflection. She wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of the constant tightrope between authenticity and performance, the very line Tim had lashed out over. She understood him more than she wanted to admit. Miles away, Tim pulled into a quiet roadside diner, the kind of place he'd lived in early in his career, before fame turned every step into spectacle. He slid into a booth, hat low, and ordered a black coffee. The waitress didn't recognize him. Moved on without a second glance. For the first time all day, Tim could breathe. He thought about the album, about the songs written in quiet moments, the stories he'd hoped to share on Kelly's couch. Instead, he'd let frustration take the wheel, spilled something real in a way that hadn't fixed a damn thing. He wasn't proud of it, but he wasn't sorry either. When the coffee arrived, steam curling upward, he wrapped his hands around the mug and stared into it like it might offer answers. By the time Kelly left the studio, the sun hung low, shadows stretching across the lot. Her team had drafted a statement, carefully neutral, respectful of Tim's perspective, forward-looking. She hadn't approved it. Sitting alone in her car, the quiet settling in, she considered calling him. Not for optics, not for damage control. Just artist to artist. She didn't. Some things needed space. Driving home, she turned on the radio. One of Tim's new songs came on raw chords filling the cabin. She listened, really listened. And for the first time all day, she smiled. Just a little dot at the diner. Tim finally checked his phone. Missed calls. Unread texts. One message stood out, from an old industry friend. "You said what a lot of us feel. Just hope it was worth it." Tim set the phone down and looked out at the fading light. Worth it? He didn't know, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he'd told the truth. And even if it cost him, the road ahead would be messy. Then again, so was the music. And that was the point.